Welcome back to my series of videos on the 2013 NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, March Madness, NCAA Men's Basketball Bracketology. We're heading into the West region now. The West region sets up with the following matchups. Number 1 Gonzaga versus number 16 Southern. Number 8 Pittsburgh versus number 9 Wichita State. Number 5 Wisconsin versus number 12 Mississippi. Number 4, Kansas State versus number 13, the winner of the play-in game between Boise and LaSalle. Number 6, Arizona versus number 11, Belmont. Number 3, New Mexico versus number 14, Harvard. Number 7, Notre Dame versus number 10, Iowa State. And number 2, Ohio State taking on number 15, Iona. Now, as far as I'm concerned, in the West region, these are the teams that are locks to make it out of the round of 64 and into the round of 32. Number 1, Gonzaga. Number 8, Pittsburgh. Number 4, Kansas State. And number 3, New Mexico, as well as number 2, Ohio State. So that does leave a couple of games in there where it's for me, it's kind of wonky. Number 5, Wisconsin versus number 12, Mississippi. As far as I'm concerned, that's a coin flip. On my Fuck Canada the 4th bracket, I have Wisconsin, the favorite, winning that game. But on my Bridgewater's Finest bracket, I have Mississippi winning that game. Number 6, Arizona versus number 11, Belmont. On my Fuck Canada the 4th bracket, I actually have the underdog Belmont winning that game, whereas, of course, on Bridgewater's Finest, I have Arizona. And number 7 versus number 10, Notre Dame versus Iowa State. On my Fuck Canada the 4th bracket, I have Iowa State taking that game, and on Bridgewater's Finest, I have Notre Dame. To me, those 3 games are kind of too close to call. They're almost coin flip situations. If I had to lean towards one, I think I would lean towards probably my Fuck Canada the 4th bracket. I can't say that 100% for sure. So I'm leaning towards taking Wisconsin, Belmont, and Iowa State in those 3 games. So a couple of upsets in there, a number 11 and a number 10 beating a number 6 and a number 7. So that would set up the following games in the round of 32. I think it's a lock in the round of 32 that Gonzaga, number 1, will play number 8 Pittsburgh. I think it's a lock that number 4 Kansas State will play either Wisconsin or Mississippi, leaning towards Wisconsin. Number 3, New Mexico, taking on either number 11 Belmont or number 6 Arizona, leaning towards number 11 Belmont. And number 2, Ohio State, taking on either number 10 Iowa State or number 7 Notre Dame, leaning towards Iowa State. My teams who are locks to make it out of the round of 32 and make it into the Sweet 16 from the West bracket, there's only one lock, and that is Ohio State. Now is where it's going to kind of get a little complicated. Number 1, Gonzaga versus number 8, Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh could potentially play the kind of game to have what it takes to beat Gonzaga. So I'm not willing to say Gonzaga is a lock to make it to the Sweet 16 because I think they're going to run into Pittsburgh, and I think Pittsburgh's going to give them a lot of problems. Now, on my Fuck Canada the 4th bracket, I have Gonzaga winning that game. Gonzaga v. Pittsburgh. But on my Bridgewater's Finest bracket, I have Pittsburgh winning that game because, again, I think this game is too close to call. I'm leaning towards taking Gonzaga. I've liked Gonzaga for a few years. I think Gonzaga can win that game, but I full well admit that Pittsburgh's got a real good shot. Now, Kansas State's game against either Wisconsin or Mississippi. If Wisconsin beats Mississippi in the round of 64, I think Wisconsin can also beat Kansas State. So, on my Fuck Canada the 4th bracket, I have Wisconsin beating Kansas State. However, if Mississippi beats Wisconsin, I don't think Mississippi can beat Kansas State. So on my Bridgewater's Finest bracket, I have Kansas State going to the Sweet 16 from the round of 32. So really it all depends on what happens in that Wisconsin-Mississippi game. If Wisconsin beats Mississippi in the round of 64, I think Wisconsin's going to the Sweet 16. Now, New Mexico's game against either Belmont or Arizona. kind of the same thing, but I don't think New Mexico can beat either of these teams. I think New Mexico they're very highly seeded, but I think they're a very susceptible team. So whoever wins between Arizona and Belmont, I think is going to the Sweet 16, because I think they will beat New Mexico after New Mexico beats Harvard. So if Belmont beats Arizona, I got Belmont going to the Sweet 16. If Arizona beats Belmont, then I've got Arizona going to the Sweet 16, because, again, don't think New Mexico beats either of those teams. From the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. Now this is where it gets really wonky. On my Fuck Canada the Fourth bracket, in the Sweet 16, in the West region, I have number 1 Gonzaga playing number 5 Wisconsin. In that game, I think Gonzaga beats Wisconsin and goes to the Elite 8. However, if you take a look at my Bridgewater's Finest bracket, in the Sweet 16, I have number 8 Pittsburgh, who I said beat Gonzaga, playing number 4 Kansas State, who I said beat Mississippi. And in that case, I have Kansas State going to the Elite 8. It's kind of confusing, and I apologize, but the West bracket, there's a lot of parity in the West bracket, so it's not an easy thing to predict. So again, Fuck Canada the Fourth, I have Gonzaga beating Wisconsin to go to the Elite 8. Bridgewater's Finest, I have Kansas State beating Pittsburgh to go to the Elite 8 out of the West region. Now, in the other game, Fuck Canada the Fourth, I have, as I said, Ohio State, who I thought was a lock, playing either Belmont or Arizona. If Belmont beats Arizona in the round of 64, believe it or not, if you're looking for a bracket buster, as far as I'm concerned, it's Belmont. I think Belmont beats Ohio State in the round of 16 to go to the Elite 8. Maybe I'm crazy, but I see magic on this Belmont team. So if Belmont beats Arizona in the round of 64, I've got Belmont going all the way to the Elite 8. However, if Arizona beats Belmont in the round of 64, I have Ohio State beating Arizona relatively handily to go to the Elite 8. So in the Elite 8, really the West Region Championship game, we'll put it that way, on my Fuck Canada the Fourth bracket, I have Gonzaga, who beat Pittsburgh, going all the way to the Elite 8, to take on Belmont, who beat Arizona in the round of 64, who I had going all the way to the Elite 8. So on my Fuck Canada the Fourth bracket, I have Gonzaga taking on Belmont for the West Region Championship, if you will, and in that game I have Gonzaga winning that game and going all the way to the Final Four. However, on my Bridgewater's Finest bracket, again, we had Gonzaga losing that game to Pittsburgh. I have then Ohio State going all the way to the Elite 8 to play number 4 Kansas State, who beat Mississippi. And in that game, I have Ohio State beating Kansas. The West bracket for me it's a lot of what if. If you're asking me which way I lean, again, I'm leaning towards my Fuck Canada the Fourth bracket. So I'm leaning towards Gonzaga beating Pittsburgh in the round of 32, beating Wisconsin in the Sweet 16, and then beating Belmont in the Elite 8 to go to the Final Four. However, I full well agree that if Pittsburgh beats Gonzaga, the whole thing could be tossed on its head, and I think Ohio State at number 2 can come out and go to the Final Four. So if you're looking for teams to ride in the West bracket, Gonzaga, if you're confident that Gonzaga can beat Pittsburgh, ride Gonzaga all the way to the Final Four. If you're not confident in that, I would ride Ohio State all the way to the Final Four. But you got to look at number 4 Kansas State has a path that they could get to the Elite 8, and Belmont. I honestly think if Belmont beats Arizona, Belmont has a path to get to the Elite 8. So keep Belmont in mind when you're filling out your West Region bracket. Confusing enough? I hope so, because a couple of these other brackets is going to get real confusing here too. So come on back, and we're going to take a look next at the South bracket and continue with our videos into the 2013 NCAA Men's Basketball Tournament.